Hey, Rosie. Times sure have changed since you were around 72 years ago, haven't they? It's a story as old as the Revolutionary War. Even during the Civil War in the 1860s, women were dressing up like men and joining the fight, like Mulan, or being spies and nurses. I mean, during World War I, women needed to take over the men's jobs just to keep the country running. Although today I think the country pretty much runs itself on computers. It was basically the same situation during World War II. And the country took to propaganda posters and advertisements to make women feel like it was their civic duty to take these jobs. And women joined the nurse corps and the armed forces so that more men could be sent into combat. The war effort was priority one for everyone in the nation back then. I think I read somewhere that there were about 350,000 women who served in the U.S. Armed Forces or something, both at home and overseas. But I was right here at home in Van Nuys, California, where I'd gone to school. It was there I got a job at the radioplane munitions factory. I was married at the time, and my husband Jim joined the Merchant Marine in 1944 when I was 18. I wore overalls in the factory. I was surprised that they insisted on this. Putting a girl in overalls is like having her work in tights, particularly if a girl knows how to wear them. I think it was that same fall that Corporal David Conover came to the factory. He was supposed to take videos and photographs for Hal Roach Studios of the ladies back home, who were working hard for the boys out on the battlefields. You know, to boost morale and make them feel loved. I was so thrilled to see the photographers around. I wrote a letter to my Aunt Grace and I told her about Mr. Conover and how he and a few other factory-bound photographers had asked me to pose for them as a real model. And they all asked where the hell I'd been hiding, and they took a lot of moving pictures of me, and some of them asked for dates. Naturally, I refused. David Conover used to have a studio on the strip of Sunset and asked if I would come work with him. He told me what to wear, what shade of lipstick, so the next couple of weeks I posed for him at different times, and he said all the pictures came out perfect. He's awfully nice, and is married, and is strictly business, which is the way I like it. Jimmy seems to like the idea of me modeling, so I'm glad about that. It was Mr. Conover who took the pictures that were to become my first magazine covers for Yank Magazine and Douglas Air Review, the first of what would be many. But it's so strange to me that no one can seem to remember which magazine came first. You'd think one of us would have written it down or something, but it all kind of happened at once. Yes, I always knew the camera was kind to me. I thought of it as my friend. It was because of David Conover that I found that out. Mr. Conover showed our pictures to another photographer named Potter Hughes, who showed them to a woman named Emmeline Snively, and she ran a place called the Blue Book Modeling Agency. And suddenly, I was to become the most photographed model in the world. David Conover said later that he loaned me $100 for my Blue Book modeling classes. And maybe he did. I used to borrow money once or twice a week back then, who remembers? He was shipped overseas after our sessions, and I didn't meet with Mr. Conover again until about 6 years later on the set of my picture Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. He was a little different then. He was thrilled to see me, of course, and very polite still, but I think he had started to remember our time together a little differently than it had happened by then. That happens to me a lot. Men tell stories to each other, and then after a few too many tellings, they really start to believe them. But he was still the same old David in every other way, and we stayed friends always. After the wars, when things started changing, the people started to express how much they'd rather make love than war. And women stopped needing propaganda to get them to do what was considered men's jobs, because we'd done them enough by then that we knew we could, and no woman wanted to be pushed back into an apron. She wanted to choose for herself what her heart desired her to do, and after all, doesn't everyone deserve that?